Jules, could you please speak of what drew you to Will Eisner's shop and what you encountered when you first tried to break into its doors?
Well, it wasn't American Visual. It was 1946. Will had just resumed the story. I don't know, maybe 6 months or a little longer after that. And I had followed it from the pre-Army days, in its formative time, to the time that it was being taken over when Will was in the military, in the Army, down in Washington, with others, most notably Lou Fine, and how the strip, the comic book really deteriorated. I mean, it began as a not bad Eisner imitation and had some value to it, and then it became crappier and crappier and almost unreadable. And then when Will came out, suddenly there was this explosion. I mean, as if he had been just waiting and waiting and waiting, and he started out having, it was as if he had been drawing all of these years, and in quiet and secret, and all of those improvements suddenly appeared out of nowhere, both in terms of story, but in particularly the art. The art was unbelievable. And I was a kid in the Bronx, and I loved the stuff, and I needed a job. I was 17, 16 and a half, and I just went down and I lucked out. But and I've written about this, and I've talked about it in audiences like this. I'm not going to go into it again. But it was very, very, very exciting, and I for one, perhaps because, unlike Will, I had no notion of business, no interest in business, and the whole notion of business bored me. I never took the businessman seriously, and I never thought Will was more than moderately successful at it. I mean, he was a great cartoonist, and a great writer as a cartoonist, and a great conceiver of comic art, and he was a not particularly successful businessman. I mean, I think he got along, he made some money, but he didn't have the career that he wanted and dreamed of, and for those years that he was out of comics, you could see the glory and gusto when he leaped back into it with the graphic novels. That's what he was born to do, and that's what he ended up doing. And I'm very happy that the business stuff helped him make a living. We all have to make a living. I'm trying to figure out how to do that these days. But I didn't find the output particularly impressive or particularly interesting.
What was the environment?
If Joe Dope was the top of it, then let's see how far we go.
What was the environment of the shop like? Going in there as a 17-year-old man, what were the things that Will taught?
I think everything you described in your writing there is exactly what it was some 30 years earlier, whatever it was when I was there in the 1940s. That nondescript is exactly the way he worked. He wasn't interested in, I mean, I'm surprised that he had awards up. That's quite an improvement. I don't think he was much interested in cultural artifacts or furniture. I mean, Will's sense of furniture was the backgrounds in the spirit, or in his graphic novels. He was, not only was he a child of the Depression, but I think his Depression taste never really left him. And everything had a function, and if it didn't have a function, it wasn't there. There was nothing fancy, there was nothing impressive, there was nothing except what was impressive was the atmosphere in the studio, because within a year or two of my working for Eisner, he became a magnet for every young, aspiring, innovational cartoonist coming up. And they all wended their way to the Eisner studio, which always was in an unimpressive neighborhood, surrounded by unimpressive buildings, and one of which he gave me the key to, and I used to bring girls up there at night. And that was all that was ever impressive about it, how I nearly got laid, but not quite.
Did you see any inkling from those days of Will believing that there was more to the work than the job in front of him? He, in late life, spoke a lot of always having a vision for a grand achievement, but did you actually see that at the time?
I think, my memory is that this grand achievement notion came later. Is that I don't think, when I was working with him and talking, it seemed to me the only one talking about this work being art was me. Will was part of a generation of cartoonists who found it, in a sense, more manly to dismiss the art nature of the work, which had something to do with being a pansy. That this was work they turned out, and they weren't, and most of them, Will saved everything, but most are strip artists. And I saw their work thrown out and didn't think much about it. Kniff didn't think he was an artist, and Kniff had a much bigger reputation in those years than Will did, and was doing extraordinary work. But you call Kniff an artist, and he'd snort in derision. And that was basically the attitude of these guys who were doing some extraordinary work, some beautiful work which you now see, thank God, in collections. And you can't believe they had no idea what they were doing. I don't think they did, and I think one of the reasons was that the whole culture that they worked in was in opposition to any notion of this big